In the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, powerful cards can be balanced by the difficulty and resource investment involved with bringing them out. Sometimes the payoff is worth jumping through these hoops, and sometimes it really isn't. But this list isn't about cards being good or bad, it's about the hoops they have to jump through. Starting this list off at number 10 is a classic Yu-Gi-Oh! And literal Duel Links icon, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth. This is a level 8 Earth Insect with an impressive 3,500 attack and 3,000 defense, which was first released into the TCG in 2003 as a prismatic rare promotional card, with copies of the Yu-Gi-Oh! The Sacred Cards game. 2 years later, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth would see wider printing in Dark Beginning 2, even if it would never see wide play in the TCG. In a game full of metrics for tracking how well you're performing, including life points, card advantage, and number of negates, perhaps the most valuable Yu-Gi-Oh! Resource is time. All of your interruptions, additional cards, all serve the goal of stalling or quickening the game depending on whether your goal is attacking or defending. Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, as well as its weaker versions, Great Moth and Larva Moth, use time as a resource in a much more direct way. None of them can be normal summoned or sat, and instead must be special summoned from your hand by tributing a Petite Moth you control, which has been equipped with Cocoon of Evolution for the requisite number of turns. Larva Moth must tribute a Petite Moth Cocoon combo on specifically its second turn on the field, and Great Moth can do the same on specifically turn counter 4. If you draw into Larva Moth, Petite Moth, and Cocoon of Evolutions on turn 3, you're out of luck. And same goes for turn 5 with Great Moth. Luckily, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth is a little bit more forgiving. As long as your Petite Moth plus Cocoon of Evolution has been on the field for 6 or more turns, you can tribute it to summon the biggest moth from your hand. While in some ways these conditions are more lenient than those of Larva and Great Moth, the odds that you can actually see an additional turn in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just go down and down. Can you hold on to Petite Moth and Cocoon for 6 whole turns without losing the game? Almost certainly not. Summoning Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth is such a feat of strength that the Duel Links icon I mentioned earlier is specifically awarded to players after they manage to pull it off. This is much easier in the modern game thanks to Cocoon of Ultra Evolution, a quick play spell that's a retrain of Cocoon of Evolution, first released into TCG as a 2018 set, Legendary Duelist Ancient Millennium. This card lets you tribute an insect monster with an equip card to special summon any insect monster from your deck while ignoring its summoning conditions. Technically, summoning Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth isn't even that hard now thanks to Cocoon of Ultra Evolution, but the unparalleled insanity of Moth's original summoning condition overshadowed the modern ease with which you might choose to bring it to the field. Quick play spells are some of the most versatile cards in Yu-Gi-Oh!, so it might be hard to imagine Cocoon of Ultra Evolution getting any better, if it didn't actually already happen. In Speed Duel format, Cocoon of Ultra Evolution was redesigned into the skill card, giving players instant and irrecoverable access to the powerful boss monster incubator. Ultimately, Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth takes number 10 on this list because of how effective modern support is at skipping the hurdles this big bug once upon a time required. But even if we choose to avoid the proper steps of calling upon Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, they're still there. If you ever want to break your brain trying to ethically source your Great Moth, you can, at least in theory, try it. In practice, that might be difficult, but sometimes that's reason enough to do it. And at number 9, we have Supreme King Zark. This level 12 Dark Fusion Pendulum Dragon has 4,000 attack and defense, and like Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, is relatively easy to summon using modern support. But this wasn't always the case, and that history is why Supreme King Zark lands on this list. Even if new cards relegate it to a spot close to the bottom, when Zark first released in the 2017 set Maximum Crisis, it was one of those cards with an entire book of text that most players thankfully never had to read because the only parts that mattered were its heinous summoning conditions. Supreme King Zark had to be fusion summoned, and required 4 materials, and those 4 materials were 4 dragons, including 1 fusion, 1 Xyz, 1 synchro, and 1 pendulum. This was a steep ask for 2017, and honestly still would be today. Many decks find it easier to specialize into a single summoning mechanic rather than hauling a smodgepodge of different summoning styles everywhere they go. And many decks take this a step further by using cards that lock the player into a specific extra deck category. On release, Zark did provide players with a few tools to help it hit the field, including the Pendulum monsters Supreme King Gate 0, Supreme King Gate Infinity, and Supreme King Dragon Darkworm. Darkworm could search the gates, and the gates could cheat dragons out of your extra deck. Things got a little easier a month after Maximum Crisis, when Pendulum Evolution set introduced Astrograph and Chronograph Sorcerer. On top of being good Pendulum support, Both of these cards had effects to banish the materials for Supreme King Zarks from hand, field, or graveyard to fuse into the big guy himself. You had to use the Arc 5 specifically named Pendulum Dragon, Synchro Dragon, Xyz Dragon, and Fusion Dragon cards as material, however. But 2 months after Pendulum Evolution, the TCG got coded the Duelists, a new set that introduced Supreme King specific variants of the Arc 5 Extra Deck Dragons, including Supreme King Dragon Odd Eyes, Supreme King Dragon Clear Eyes, Supreme King Dragon Dark Rebellion, and Supreme King Dragon Starving Venom. But even with all of these cards, summoning Supreme King Zark was still a feat, and would remain so until 2023's Maze of Memories and Age of Overlord set, which introduced Soul of the Supreme King and Soul of the Supreme Celestial King respectively. These sets printed other decent Supreme King support like Supreme King Dragon Lightworm and Supreme King Gate Magician and Performapal Duelist Extraordinaire, but aren't as important for the purposes of this list, because the Supreme King Soul normal traps both summon Zark instantly while ignoring summoning conditions. Of course, since those cards are traps, bringing out Supreme King Zark on turn 1 is still a stylish move. And now let's look at what Zark does on field. On special summon, Zark blows up your opponent's field, so we're off to a great start. It can't be targeted with or destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and after destroying a monster by battle, you can special summon a Supreme King Dragon monster from your deck or extra deck. On destruction, Supreme King Zark moves to your Pendulum Zone with a scale of 1, rather than going to the face-up extra deck. While it's a scale, Zark locks Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters controlled by your opponent from activating their effects, and can destroy a card added to your opponent's hand once per turn outside of the draw phase or damage step. In conclusion, Supreme King Zark is a powerful boss monster with very difficult historical summoning conditions that aren't as relevant as they used to be. And at number 8, we have Armityle the Chaos Phantasm. This is a level 12 Dark Fiend with 0 base attack and defense, and first released into the TCG as part of 2009's Ancient Prophecy. It's a fusion monster, but can only be special summoned from the extra deck by skipping over Polymerization to send its 3 materials from field to banishment. During your turn, Armityle gains 10,000 attack, and during your opponent's turn, that number phases back down to 0. Armityle the Chaos Phantasm is kind of similar to Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, in that modern support makes it easier to summon. But before I get into that, let's look at all of the ingredients that go into hard summoning Armityle. First, you'll need the 3 Sacred Beasts. Urai, Lord of Syrian Flames, is a level 10 Fire Pyro monster that must be special summoned from hand by sending 3 face-up trap cards you control to the grave. Haman, Lord of Striking Thunder, is a level 10 Light Thunder monster that must be special summoned from hand by sending 3 face-up spell cards you control to the graveyard. And Raviel, Lord of Phantasms, is a level 10 Dark Fiend that must be special summoned from hand, by this time attributing 3 Fiend monsters. By banishing these 3, you can summon Armityle the Chaos Phantasm by going -11 in card advantage. On the field, Armityle cannot be destroyed by battle, but makes a pretty persuasive and painful target with 0 attack during your opponent's turn. It's also easily cleared by pretty much all forms of removal by effect, making the work required to put this monster on the field a difficult sell to most duelists. Modern support rectified this a little bit, with the field spell Fallen Paradise from 2017's Duelist Saga set providing Armityle and the Sacred Beast protection from destruction by effect in general, and targeting by monster effect in particular. 2020 Structure Deck Sacred Beast introduced new support for these cards, including main deck monsters like Dark Beckoning Beast and Chaos Chord, and spell/trap card support. Dimension Fusion Destruction could banish Uria, Haman, Raviel from your hand, field, or graveyard to special summon a Phantasm Fusion monster from your extra deck while ignoring its summon conditions. This was a huge step towards Armityle's playability, and the Chaos Phantasm would receive more support in the form of a signature attack card from the later 2020 set Phantom Rage, Armityle the Chaos Phantasm Phantom of Fury. Its name becomes the same as the original Armityle the Chaos Phantasm on the field, and it also has 0 attack. But that's okay. Its main phase ignition effect lets you give Phantom of Fury to your opponent. Then, during the end phase, it blows up. Phantom of Fury banishes every card on its side of the field and lets its original owners summon an Armityle the Chaos Phantasm version 1. But while it's certainly easier to summon Armityle nowadays than it once was, it wouldn't be exactly right to call doing so easy. So Armityle well earns its spot at number 8. And mobilizing at number 7, we have Flying Fortress Skyfire. This 5D's era card first released into the TCG in 2009 as part of the Crimson Crisis set, and is a level 8 win attribute machine with 3,000 attack and 2,500 defense. Once per turn, Flying Fortress Skyfire can send 1 card from your hand to the grave to non-target pop a card controlled by your opponent. During your opponent's turn, Flying Fortress Skyfire has 2 effects, though you'll have to choose one to activate once per turn. For your first option, when your opponent normal or special summons a monster, you can reactively destroy it and inflict 800 damage. For your second, when your opponent sets a card, you can reactively destroy it and inflict 800 damage. Either way, your opponent loses a card and some life points. But that's all the effects the Flying Fortress is able to deploy, and none of these are defensive. Skyfire has no innate protection and no floating effect, making it an incredibly risky boss to invest in, and you have to invest in it to get it on the field. Flying Fortress Skyfire cannot be normal summoned or set, and instead must be special summoned via the effect of Summon Reactor SK. This level 5 Dark Machine with 2000 attack and 1400 defense inflicts 800 damage to your opponent the first time a monster is summoned to their side of the field each turn. During the battle phase, if the effect of Summon Reactor SK was activated during the turn, you can negate 1 enemy attack. Finally, Summon Reactor SK can send exactly 1 face-up copy of itself, Trap Reactor YFI, and Spell Reactor RE to the graveyard to special summon Flying Fortress Skyfire from your hand deck or graveyard. Spell Reactor RE and Trap Reactor YFI are both low-level Dark Machines with once per turn effects to destroy an opponent's activated spell or trap card and burn for 800 damage respectively. Notably, this doesn't negate, so most spells and traps will go off unimpeded. Although this does counter field spells and continuous spells and traps that require field presence to resolve. The reactor monsters are machines, which gives them access to some support, but as a script writing, they aren't a proper archetype, which makes assembling them on the field somewhat difficult. They've got an anime-exclusive trap card called Delta Reactor that does let you summon Flying Fortress Skyfire from hand, deck, or graveyard while ignoring summon conditions by sending the 3 reactors in your control to the grave, but that's also basically just Summon Reactor SK's effect, so this piece of hypothetical support doesn't offer much. Dark Flat Top, on the other hand, is a level 8 Dark Machine Synchro that actually exists and released a few years after Skyfire in the 2012 set Order of Chaos. It has 0 attack and 3000 defense, and specifically requires a Dark Attribute Tuner plus non-tuner machine monsters as materials. On field, Dark Flat Top can activate its once per turn ignition effect to target a reactor monster or Flying Fortress Skyfire in your graveyard, and summon it while ignoring the summoning conditions. Also, if Dark Flat Top is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can special summon a level 5 or lower machine monster from your hand. Just a note, even though it says it can summon Skyfire ignoring its summoning conditions, this can only apply if Skyfire was summoned correctly first and then sent to the graveyard. You cannot just discard Skyfire from hand or deck to the graveyard and then cheat it out with Dark Flat Top. But despite this useful, if restrictive piece of synchro support, summoning Flying Fortress Skyfire isn't easy. It's doable, but very difficult and lands it on this list. And assembling into spot number 6 is another big machine boss, the level 10 Earth attribute Machina Force. This big mechanical menace has 4600 attack and 4100 defense, and first released into the TCG in 2010 as part of structure deck Machina Mayhem. In order to declare an attack, Machina Force mandates its controller must first pay 1000 life points, but that's usually worth swinging for 4600. You can also send a Machina Force you control to the grave to target and summon one of each Machina Soldier, Machina Sniper, and Machina Defender from your graveyard. This is all well and good, but let's look at the steps required to bring Machina Force onto the field in the first place. Before anything else, you'll need Commander Covington, a level 4 Earth machine with 1000 attack and 400 defense. While Covington has Machina Defender, Sniper, and Soldier with him on the field, you can activate Covington's effect to summon Machina Force from your hand or deck by sending these 3 specific Machinas to the graveyard. You might think, hey, that sounds really annoying, and you'd be totally right. The 3 Machinas aren't bad, but aren't exactly powerhouses or playmakers, and Commander Covington is pretty much a weak normal monster outside his Machina Force effect. In a lot of ways, Machina Force and Flying Fortress Skyfire from the previous entry are kinda similar. They're composite machine monsters assembled through non-traditional means, but Machina Force is just harder to work with. For one, it requires 1 more material than Flying Fortress Skyfire, who only needs 3 names to summon correctly. For 2, it's much worse than Skyfire, despite having better stats, archetypal support, and a later release date. But unlike Flying Fortress Skyfire, Machina Force has actually seen some play. Not on the field, of course. Machina Force's niche comes as a high-level searchable Machina main deck card. This is useful because of Machina Fortress, a monster with 1 more syllable and a bunch more reasons to use it. By discarding a machine monster with a sum level of 8 or more, you can special summon Machina Fortress from your hand or graveyard. Discarding Machina Force is ideal for the purposes because it can meet the entire requirement alone. And you're also not really losing anything because you weren't gonna summon Machina Force anyway. And we're going all the way back to 2003's Dark Crisis for number 5. Mirage Knight is a level 8 light warrior with 2800 attack and 2000 defense that's just unreasonably difficult to summon. Like every other main deck monster on this list, Mirage Knight cannot be normal summoned or set, making its powerful effects just as much of a mirage as its name. Still, let's look at the payoff before we inventory the cost. During damage calculation, Mirage Knight gains attack equal to the original attack of the monster it battles. This makes Mirage Knight great for beating over big bodies, like a 5-headed dragon for example, but this is less useful against monsters with stats inflated by equip cards or other effects. This will probably never come up, but there's some incredibly niche advice. Do not use Mirage Knight to attack into Gren Maju de Aiza. But like the optical illusion it's named for, Mirage Knight is ephemeral in nature. During the end phase of the turn that it battled, it will banish itself from the field. Okay, now let's get into how you get it on the field in the first place. Mirage Knight can only be special summoned by the effect of Dark Flare Knight. This level 6 Dark Warrior Fusion has a kind of low stats at 2200 attack and 800 defense, but you take no battle damage from attacks involving the card, so that's fine. After it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon Mirage Knight from your hand or deck. The battle damage immunity does double work here, since it enables you to crash Dark Flare Knight into a big enemy monster to summon Mirage Knight, who is then able to beat over that monster before vanishing from the duel. Fusion summoning Dark Flare Knight is as simple as first fusion summoning Flame Swordsman and then fusing him with Dark Magician, which actually isn't simple at all. You could use instant fusion to bring out Flame Swordsman to use as Dark Flare Knight's material though, and there's some value here since that lets you cut Flame Swordsman's awful vanilla materials of Flame Manipulator and Masaki the Legendary Swordsman. The Eye of Timaeus can send a Dark Magician to the grave to summon Dark Flare Knight, and that's probably the best way. But this entry isn't even about Dark Flare Knight, so that only gets us halfway to Mirage Knight, while losing the opportunity to summon a better Dark Magician fusion. And at number 4, we have the level 11 Light Fiend Tierra Source of Destruction. This card has 3400 attack and 3600 defense, and first released into the TCG as part of the 2017 set Raging Tempest. Despite having the word destruction in its name, Tierra doesn't actually destroy anything. Instead, it resets everything. On special summon, Tierra shuffles all cards into the deck except itself. This includes cards from both players' hands, fields, and graveyards, as well as face-up pendulum monsters in the extra deck. Neither player can activate cards or effects in response to Tierra, and its summon cannot be negated. If Tierra hits the field, everything else is leaving. So, what do you have to do to bring out Tierra and zero out the rest of the game? As expected, it cannot be normal summoned or set, and can only be special summoned from hand by its own summoning condition, which stipulates that you must shuffle 10 other unique cards from your hand and field into the deck. This doesn't even look easy, and summoning Tierra is actually even harder than it looks. 10 cards, 11 counting Tierra, in hand and on field is a significant presence. If you've got that amount of cards, in many situations, you've probably already won the game and don't need the reset. But Tierra's requirement of shuffling unique cards makes this even more difficult. When constructing combos, you can typically boost consistency by running multiple copies of important cards. This can become a liability for Tierra Turbo, since repeat names won't count towards your Tierra total. Tierra, Source of Destruction, is a thematic opposition of Sophia, Goddess of Rebirth, a card that featured on the previous Harder to Summon Monsters video. Tierra is a light fiend and Sophia is a dark fairy. Sophia is organic in design, while Tierra is mechanical. They both occupy powerful corners of the dual terminal universe. And emerging at number 3, we have Timaeus the Knight of Destiny, a level 10 light warrior fusion from 2015's Dragon of Legends 2 set. The Knight of Destiny has question mark attack and question mark defense. A simple contact special summon of Legendary Knight Timaeus, Legendary Knight Critias, and Legendary Knight Hermos, you can call Timaeus the Knight of Destiny out of the extra deck by sending those 3 monsters you control to the graveyard without using polymerization. But that's where the convenience ends, because the Legendary Knights Timaeus, Critias, and Hermos all cannot be normal summoned or set, and instead must be special summoned using the spell card Legend of Heart. By paying 2,000 life points and tributing 1 warrior monster as a cost, you can resolve Legend of Heart, which lets you special summon different Legendary Knights from your hand, deck, or graveyard equal to the number of legendary dragon spells you can banish from your grave, with that number capped out at 3. Those legendary dragon spells are the Eye of Timaeus, the Fang of Critias, and the Claw of Hermos, and each of them are able to summon legendary dragon fusions from the extra deck. The Eye of Timaeus pairs with Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl to summon any DM or DMG fusion. The Fang of Critias can send specific trap cards to the grave to summon their paired legendary dragon, including Mirror Force Dragon, Destruction Dragon, Tyrant Burst Dragon, and Doom Virus Dragon. The Claw of Hermos can send specific type monsters to the graveyard to summon Union Fusion monsters that can equip to specific monsters and power them up. Using all 3 in any one deck is gonna be difficult, because they all want to do different things. So your best bet for Legend of Heart is to turbo mill the 3 specific spells to the grave and then try to get Legend of Heart plus a warrior in hand, while hopefully avoiding your 3 legendary knights who are wasted draws. On field, Timaeus the Knight of Destiny is pretty cool. It's unaffected by other cards and is able to make its attack equal to the highest attack on the field once per battle during damage calculation. After Timaeus the Knight of Destiny is destroyed by battle, it gets to float back into its materials from the hand, deck, or graveyard, while ignoring their summoning conditions. But while it's got good effects, getting to Timaeus isn't easy, and requires you to run multiple cards you don't want to draw, which doesn't make things easier. If you're trying to summon Timaeus the Knight of Destiny, hopefully Destiny is on your side. And rising again to claim the number 2 spot is Fushioh Richie. This level 7 Dark Zombie monster has 2600 attack and 2900 defense, and was first exhumed in 2003 by the Pharaonic Guardian set. And if you already guessed that it can't be normal summoned or set or special summoned except under unreasonably difficult conditions, congrats, you're very right. Fushioh Richie can only be summoned from your hand or deck by tributing a copy of Great Dizard on your side of the field that has fulfilled its effect. Great Dizard is a level 6 dark spellcaster with 1900 attack and 2300 defense from the same set as Fushioh Richie, that has a relatively unique effect within the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It has 2 effects that can only be activated in sequence during separate instances by meeting trigger conditions. After Great Dizard destroys its first monster by battle, it gains the ability to negate and destroy any spell or trap card that targets it while it's face up on the field. After Great Dizard destroys its second monster by battle, it gains access to its ignition effect. By offering itself as a tribute, Great Dizard can summon a copy of Fushioh Richie from your hand or deck. Often, cards are simply difficult to summon because they require either a large card investment or especially difficult materials. While Fushioh Richie dabbles with specific material difficulty, it also requires time and actions to summon, 2 resources that can never be guaranteed. Monsters typically only get 1 attack near the battle phase, so unless you're using cards that twist the game rules to allow Great Dizard a second attack in a single turn, you'll have to keep Great Dizard alive through your opponent's turn in order to maybe attack again for a chance at summoning Fushioh Richie. Of course, for this to work, your opponent must have 2 monsters for Great Dizard to attack and destroy. And although 1900 attack isn't awful, it's not enough to beat over most high-level monsters. If your Great Dizard survives its battle phases and you're able to summon Fushioh Richie, your reward isn't worth the effort. On field, Fushioh Richie can book itself once per turn during the main phase. It'd keep Great Dizard's protection and can destroy in response to any spell or trap card that targets it, and on flip can special summon a zombie monster from your graveyard. Sometimes it's a little unfair to call the effects of monsters from over 20 years ago bad, because the game was different then. The power level was way lower, but Fushioh Richie is just bad. Sure, it counters Shadow Spell and Spellbinding Circle, but Fissure and Raigeki still clear it, and both of those cards predate Fushioh Richie. Also, releasing before Fushioh were Call of the Haunted, Monster Reborn, and Premature Burial, all cards able to revive a zombie or any other monster from the grave way more efficiently than the Great Dizard battling twice into a Fushioh Richie, self-booking into an eventual flip can do instead. And capping off this list at number 1 is a number that's way more complicated. Number IC1000 Numerounius Numerounia is a rank 13 light fiend with question mark attack and defense. It got minted into the TCG in exclusively premium gold rare as part of 2021's Maximum Gold Eldorado set. As of screenwriting, this card's only printing, so hopefully you like the borders of your card shiny. Right from the jump, Numerounius Numerounia has extremely unfriendly summoning conditions. As a rank 13, it requires an overlay of 5 level 13 monsters in order to summon. Of course, since Yu-Gi-Oh card-based levels typically max out at 12, these requirements are almost impossible to fulfill. Well, almost, because you can technically field multiple level 13s through level modulation effects, but you'd have to be an incredibly skilled FA driver to summon number IC1000 Numerounius Numerounia using your race car deck. To complicate things further, Numerounius Numerounia requires an overlay of 5 level 13s, which just isn't even slightly realistic. Luckily, since its conditions are intentionally asinine, number IC1000 comes with an alternative summoning condition. Number C1000 Numerounia is a level 12 light fiend with question mark attack and defense, and the comparatively easier summoning condition of overlaying 5 level 12s. If number C1000 Numerounia is destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard while it has a material, you can cheat summon number IC1000 Numerounius Numerounia while attaching number C1000 as a material. But overlaying 5 level 12s is still a really tall ask. But thankfully we have the spell card Numeron Chaos Ritual, which is not actually a ritual spell by the way. If your face-up number C1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya was destroyed by a monster effect this turn, you can activate Numeron Chaos Ritual to summon number C1000 Numerounia by targeting Numeron Network plus 4 number Xyz monsters from grave or banishment and attaching those 5 cards as its materials. If summoned this way, number C1000 Numerounia gains 10,000 attack and defense. So that's pretty cool. Numeron Chaos Ritual does make it so you can only normal or special summon one more time during the turn after resolution, but that's all you need to go into number IC1000 Numerounius Numerounia, so who cares? But what about number C1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya? What's the deal with that thing? Well, it's a rank 2 dark machine with 2000 attack and 1000 defense that requires an overlay of 4 level 2 monsters. On XC summon, number C1 banishes all monsters on field. This includes itself, but don't worry, we're still cooking. During your standby phase, you can bring number C1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya back from banishment. If you do this while you control the field spell Numeron Network, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to the total attack of all banished Xyz monsters. From here, you can proceed to try to pop your number C1 by monster effect to meet the activation conditions of Numeron Chaos Ritual to summon number C1000, and hopefully get it destroyed by your opponent's card effect to finally summon number IC1000. Summoning 4 level 2s for number C1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya is way easier than messing with level 12s and 13s, but there's another way to bring out number C1. You can instantly rank up into number C1 using a copy of number 1 Numeron Gate Ekum you control and transferring its Xyz materials. Ekum requires 3 level 1s to hard summon, but that's often easier than 4 level 2s anyway. Also, you don't have to hard summon it. While you control the field spell Numeron Network and you don't control any monsters, the normal spell Numeron Calling can special summon 4 Numeron Gate Xyz monsters from your extra deck. This instantly gets you number 1 Numeron Gate Ekum, number 2 Numeron Gate Devi, number 3 Numeron Gate Trini, and number 4 Numeron Gate Katavari. Thanks to Numeron Calling, they all get banished during the end phase, and you can only normal or special summon one more time during that turn. But those constraints don't really matter. The Numeron Gate monsters all have 1000 attack and 100 defense. They can't be destroyed by battle, and they share a powerful effect. At the end of the damage step after battling a monster, each gate can detach a material to double the attack of all Numerons you control until the end of turn. Numeron Calling doesn't give your gates any Xyz materials, but the field spell Numeron Network lets you activate their effects without detaching. And now it's math time. Number 1 Numeron Gate Ekum battles and doubles the attack of your other gates, who jump from 1000 to 2000. Next, number 2 Numeron Gate Devi battles and doubles the attack of the remaining 2 gates to 4000. Number 3 Numeron Gate Trini swings with its huge 4000 attack stat, after which it doubles the remaining number 4 Numeron Gate Katavari to a massive 8000. If your opponent survives the battle phase, you can use a remaining summon to rank number 1 Numeron Gate Ekum into number C1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya, instantly banishing your field. When Sunya returns from banishment during your standby phase, you'll burn your opponent for at least 3000. Now you have Sunya on field, and you can start your climb into number IC1000 Numerounius Numerounia. The field spell Numeron Network makes all of this easier by sending Numeron spells from deck to grave to copy their effects. But easier and easy are not the same thing at all. It's also easier to skip the gates entirely and summon number C1000 Numerounia with materials using Rank Up Magic Argent Chaos Force on number 84 Pain Gainer, but that's still pretty hard for cheat summoning. Now that we've combed through all of these conditions, let's talk about Numerounius Numerounia on the field. If summoned by the effect of number C1000 Numerounia, Numerounius Numerounia gains 100,000 attack and defense during your opponent's turn. Also, the following effects are applied from start of the next turn after Numerounius Numerounia is summoned. Your opponent has to attack if able. At the end of your opponent's turn, if Numerounius Numerounia did not battle, you win the duel. Also, you can detach a material to negate an incoming attack and gain life points equal to that attack. Number IC1000 Numerounius Numerounia takes the number 1 spot on this list because of just how long it took to explain the chain of causality of its summoning conditions, and now I'm tired.